Well, I took the finished preamp and listened to it last night, and I'll give my listening impressions in more detail later, but suffice it to say that using these higher quality parts, it definitely sounds better. So that was a big win. But the longer chassis by itself did not get rid of the hum. It's I would say probably 20% better, but it's still there. Again, you don't hear it unless you're within 6 inches with your ear in line with the woofer of my Klipsch RP 600Ms. And once you're about a foot away, you can't hear it at all. But I'd still like to get rid of it if it's possible. I'm not sure if what we have is like electromagnetic issue that some shielding would fix, or if it's a mechanical vibration from the transformer getting to the tubes, and the tubes are a little microphonic and they're picking up the hum in the chassis from the transformer being bolted to it. And so what we're going to try is putting in a bulkhead, baffle, shield, whatever you want to call it, between the two inside the chassis out of aluminum, and see if that helps the problem. So I'm going to show you how to fabricate up something like this. It's not real hard. You want to get some thin sheet aluminum. This is what we're going to be working with, is like this stuff. And let me measure this. This is like 125 thousandths thick. It's some really thin stuff. It's less than 1 millimeter, it's almost about a half a millimeter thick. So it's some pretty thin aluminum that should be really easy to work with. The first thing you want to do is we're going to make a template out of a piece of cardboard. And I'm just using the side off this APC little unit I bought. You want some fairly thin cardboard. This is like a little corrugated. It's almost better if it's not corrugated at all, but you can't really use like the thick corrugated, so look for some thin cardboard. Paper is really not a very good thing to use for this. You want something that's got a little bit of strength to it. And so first thing we do is we measure what the width of this needs to be. And this doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to go with, what is that? Right at 5 3/4 of an inch. So the other thing we want to measure is how high we want to make it, this direction. And what I want to do, here's the height of the chassis, which is 3 inches, and we have these wires that we put on here, and I want to make it where I don't need to that I can run the wires kind of over the top of it. And so I think 2.5 inches looks good. And then the wires can go like over the top of it without having to punch holes in it. And it'll be shielding the two boards from each other, so there'll be like a 1/2 inch here on the top that the wires can kind of go over the top of. And we'll round the top of that off a little bit so that it's not a sharp edge. So let's get to making our template. So first we're going to mark the height, and like we said, we want to roll over the top edge a little bit. So let's add 100 thousandths to roll over on the top edge. So we mark like that. We come down here. We mark like that. And that's going to be our height. Now we want to have a little bit of a tab on each side, which I think a 1/2 inch makes sense. So let's go ahead and mark off a 1/2 inch on that side, and then we're going to mark a 1/2 inch higher, and we're going to be cutting this little part here out. So we said we want to make it 5 3/4. So we're going to come in from this 1/2 inch mark. This is going to be the width. We'll mark that. Let's go ahead and do our 1/2 inch mark on the bottom here. Then go back to 5 3/4. Mark that off. Then we're going to add our 1/2 inch to the length of that for the little fold over tab on that side. And then we get our 2 1/2 inches again. Come mark that. So that's going to be our little corner there. And then, oh, that's right, we want to add a 1/2 inch to that. And again, this is going to be inside the amp. I'm not trying to make something that's super beautiful. I'm just trying to make something functional. Oh, and then the total, okay, yeah. So we're going to, this line right here, let's go ahead and kind of scribe some of this stuff off. We can use, this as our straight edge. So that's going to be, this is going to be another, this is going to be where the fold is. We're going to have another fold here. And another fold. I don't think we marked this other 1/2 inch up right here. I mean, some people just go ahead and lay this out on the metal and cut it. I like making a little cardboard template to start with, and then give it a quick little trial fit. And if it fits good, then we cut out the actual piece of metal. We cut that out. Along this line. We cut that corner out. And cut this corner out. And we fold it along that edge. If I was going to bolt this in, I would probably make these a little bigger, but I think I'm just going to use some glue. Okay, and the finished little thing's going to look about like that. Oh, the last thing that I wanted to do was, I forgot about that. We want to trim just a little breadth off of this on each side, because we want to fold this, we want to roll this little top edge over so we don't have a sharp edge there, just so you don't have something really sharp that could easily cut through the insulation on the wire. Again, we're probably not going to have much luck getting the cardboard to bend over like we want, but we want to have that mark for the metal. And like when we do this with the metal, we'll probably get a little pair of pliers and just bend it over back on itself. like that, so we have a nice soft edge on the top. Okay, now let's get the preamp back up here and see how this piece fits inside it. I went ahead and unsoldered these wires to make it a little easier to install this and to work on it. And we should be able to go like this, and it'll sit just like that, and then the wires will come over the top of it like that. And I think that'll work perfect. And as you can see from this angle, it's going to really shield these boards from each other. And if this helps but doesn't get rid of it, I can make a second one and put it in here. I also got some material. Somebody sent me an email about this material called MU metal that is designed for shielding, and it's supposed to be like, you know, exponentially better at shielding than aluminum. So what I may do is, if this helps, I may try cutting out a little piece of that MU metal and sticking it to the face of this and see if that, you know, gets rid of the last little bit of it. So now we're going to transfer this to our piece of aluminum. Now that we have a pattern. And then I'll show you how I bend it up. So, get our piece of aluminum. And then a little screwdriver works fine for marking this off. And just go like that. That. Come on this edge. Whoop. Again, this isn't going to be visible at all. I'm planning on leaving this just bare aluminum. And I'm hoping that it'll be kind of a snug fit inside there, so that just a little bit of like RTV silicone to tack it in place will be all it needs. Now you could probably cut this with some thick scissors. I've got these some tin snips, so I'm just going to use them. And first you cut out the main shape. Like that. And then we come back and cut along this line. And we come back and cut these little corner pieces out. And then I'm going to have to move the camera over to the edge of my bench so I can show you how I bend these over. Obviously, you know, if you've got a metal fab shop and a metal brake, those are ideal for for bending these things up. But I'm pretty sure that if you've got a metal brake, you're not watching this video. Or you don't need to be anyway. Let's go ahead and cut these for the... We're going to roll this top edge over. And I have a feeling this little top edge roll might end up being a little ugly, but hey, maybe not. We'll see. And so there's our cut out piece of metal. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little better. So there's our cut out piece of metal. So let me show you how I bend this up. Let me move the camera over here to the edge of the table, because I just use the edge of this this old office desk that I use as my workbench. Again, I'm sure there's someone who's going to comment that I should be using a ball peen hammer, but we're going to use what we have, which is a little claw hammer. And you line it up on the edge of the table like that, and then I tap right on the edge to set where we're going to bend it over, and then just go like that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other end. Like I said, hit right on the corner first, and see how it puts a little mark, a little edge on it like that, and then bend it over. And it's fine if it's not exactly 90 degrees. We want it to kind of, that tension is what's going to hold it in place. And then really all it needs is just a couple little globs of RTV along this edge here to hold it where it doesn't move. So the last one we're going to do is, I actually messed up here. I should have done this part first. So we straighten this out a little bit so we can do this edge. You put it on the corner here, line it up, and then do the same thing. Come along. And then just bend that thing over like that. Again, this isn't a beauty contest. And then on this edge, I do want it 90 degrees because I want this to sit up all the way in the top, as tight as it can go. So there's that. There's that edge, like that. And now we can come back. Again, this is some pretty thin stuff that's pretty easy to work with. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to bend this little top edge over that we're going to roll over on itself. Like that. Then we can go like this. Kind of get it past 90 degrees. And then we can come in and bend it the rest of the way over, kind of doing like this motion as I'm hitting it. And it'll roll that edge over. And we can switch over this side. And we don't want to hammer this super hard flat. You want it to keep this rolled. You don't want to make this real sharp by smashing it too far. So we leave a little roll there, and see, that's nice and smooth, and that won't cut through the insulation. So let's see if this thing snaps into place and see what it looks like. A little piece of metal. And honestly, you can put this in here either way. And you can see it just fits like that. We may have to bend the edge in just a little bit to get this to stand up. And this is going to be a really nice snug fit, which is what I want. And there we go. And as you can see now, the two sections are separated apart from each other. I may slide this down a little bit so I can get in here to glue this and just run a bead of silicone across here and there and then back up here, and that should hold it in place. And then the wires will just go across like that. So I'm going to go solder all these wires back in place and plug this thing in, and I'll be right back and let y'all know how it sounds and if that got rid of the hum. Well, we got it all done. Got our wires hooked up here, and well, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. I used some rubberized contact cement to glue that in place. That way we don't have any hardware on the outside of the amp. And I went ahead and stuck this little piece of MU metal. I bought this for, well, actually I bought it for this project, but I thought it might be useful for some other things. It's some real thin self-adhesive stuff, so I stuck a little piece of that on there too. But I tested it before I put this in there, and all the hum's gone, 100%. That absolutely fixed it. And I just, like I said, I bought this piece of MU metal, so I stuck that on there just as like extra insurance, but you don't need two bulkheads. Like I said, this MU metal, you don't even really need to do that. Just this piece of sheet aluminum was enough to get rid of the last of the hum in the preamp. So I am super happy that I went ahead and rebuilt this thing. And again, we're going to do a wrap up with some tube rolling and some, listening impressions and that sort of thing. But this thing sounds fantastic. This is well worth the investment. I want to burn in these MyFlex caps. I know some people don't believe in that, but I actually think that after running for 8 or 10 hours with music playing through them, they do open up and sound a little different. So I want to run this thing the rest of the day and then do some listening impressions and do a follow-up on just the whole project. Real quickly, I will say that if you don't have the space to put a preamp this long on your shelf and you want to put them in a smaller chassis, it would be perfectly okay to get one chassis this size, one chassis this size, and then connect the two with some kind of, the wiring between them. You could put this on the floor. You could put it, obviously you don't want to put it too far away because of the voltage drop in the wiring, but you can move it a distance away if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. This worked perfectly fine, just getting a shield between the power supply and the preamp board. I don't recommend building this, leaving the board as one piece like I did in my other amplifier, because it did have some hum in it. It wasn't horrible, and you really couldn't hear it once you got a couple of feet away from the speakers, but I still have to think that impacts the sound, as this one just sounds so much better. I mean, as good as my other one sounded, this one's like next level. So anyway, hope you enjoyed my videos. If you do, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you probably in a few days when I do the follow-up on the final listening impressions to this Phono Stage preamp. Have a great day.